Yeah. Hey, well, good evening, guys. Steve and I mean, we weren't planning this, Stevie, but it's been a very strange week
It has.
when it comes to our music. I mean, we started with Roberta Flack, Angie Stone. Oops, sorry, Roy Ayers, and then just
Well,
this
we just
evening.
done an amazing podcast on Wednesday evening with VJ, the intro album. And then the following morning, we woke up to the news that Roy Ayers had passed away,
Yeah,
which was just was only really getting over the shock of. We wasn't even getting over the shock of Angie Stone. We was like, we still couldn't believe it. And like you say, the previous weekend we'd had Gwen McRae gone and Roberta Flack and Chris Jasper of the Isleys,
yeah.
Jerry Butler, a Philly legend. I mean, I know these proper soul people watch this podcast as well. So it's a lot. It's a lot to take in a week and a half. And what one of ours, Mr. D'Wayne Wiggins, because that's our era.
Yeah, there's
I
definitely
don't know the full. You can go into the full story. I don't know what was going on. I just got your message this morning, well, a bit before. Hey, Andrew.
Oh, yeah, indeed. No, I think what happened with with Dwayne, and thanks guys for joining us in. We just
Can you guys hear me? If you
yeah
can, give me a thumbs up.
we can hear you, Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't hear you guys. Sorry about that.
Oh, dear.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, you can hear us now. Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely a Bay Area legend. But what for us, as Stevie says, that he's one of our own because this was our generation. Something we speak about the Isley Brothers or Roberta Flack, and those were people who came out before I could listen to music. But Toni, this was definitely a group that I always remember the Revival being one of the first CDs I was able to buy, and Halo to Water was massive when I was in Nigeria, and Feels Good and all that stuff, and Songs of Soul. So this was like a band that I could cling to and stuff, and to think that he had been suffering with this cancer for probably a number of years, probably why he and Raphael went, and Christian, they all came together, did that massive tour, and they ended it because they probably knew that this was the last time and the last hurrah. I mean, what are your memories, Andrew, of
Oh
Tony,
my
Tony, Tony?
God. This one actually, it's hitting me hard. I met him. I lived in the Bay Area, so Tony absolutely was a big part of like my life. I'll just start it with this. Like, I was living in Nova Scotia, Canada, and I remember Feels Good, and then I remember It Never Rains in Southern California, and I'm like going, man, I wish I lived in California. I hate the rain, and then I moved to California. Then in 2000, I mean, there's so many memories. I'm gonna try to keep it short because we're talking about the music. But in 2002, he had a venue in Oakland. I want to say it was it was called House of Music. And I've been to the venue. It was like a coffee shop slash artist space in Oakland, and it was beautiful. I met him. Like, I got a picture of the two of us somewhere. I got to find it. And then in 2008, interviewed him for NJS Forever, and I think it actually might be somewhere like online. I think Vibe actually ran it, the electronic edition. So there's so much more I could say. I saw them in concert in Las Vegas, and that was
this the reunion one or
the reunion one. All three of them. It was such a special spiritual moment that you couldn't. Your phones had to be taken away, which I was a little sad about, but it made it seem that much more spiritual. And let me tell you, even though Raphael is a very prominent, talented frontman, when he came out and did Whatever You Want, like Raphael would go backstage, and all of a sudden it was D'Wayne's stage, and we all stood up. As a matter of fact, that was the first song in the concert where everyone got on their feet for Whatever You Want. It was
wow.
It was nuts. And then Slow Wine.
I love Slow Wine. I was always
Yeah,
my thing.
I'm getting chills. Anyways, I don't want to I have so much to say, but this one hurt, and I'm glad that we actually were able to make this happen and come together to talk about this today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, as you were saying, you met him.
Yeah.
And
Very mellow.
Was it a fleeting like, hello, how are you? And then, or did you actually get a chance to talk to him?
It was a little bit more. I think I asked him about working with Destiny's Child and stuff, because I know that, that like he was their first like management kind of production like situation. But it was really just talking about, one of my favorite questions I actually asked him about, but this was for the interview. I asked him about that infamous "And You Can New Jack Swing on My Nuts." I asked him like, you were part of like the New Jack Swing era, but then like in a way you kind of dissed the genre, and he laughed. And I think his position was more like, no, I love New Jack Swing. Some of my favorite memories was going on tour with Guy. I love it, all of it. But yeah, at the time, I think we were being pigeonholed as this New Jack Swing group, and we wanted to expand beyond that. And that's all that was. There was nothing more, hateful, or whatever. Hateful is even too strong word, but behind that. But I remember feeling a little dissed, about that whole.
What did he say? What was the lyric? Because I never could hear it.
It's an Ice Cube sample. It's from the wrong N word to F with, and like Ice Cube goes F R&B and the Running Man, and he goes, and you can do Jack's, So then Tony took it. That sample for If I Had No Loot. It's a catchy line.
Yeah, it was great. It's a great little bit. Was it on Ex-Girlfriend? On the track?
I never heard that whole album, but I defer to you on.
I'm sure it was on the track My Ex-Girlfriend.
Oh no,
it's on If I Had No Loot is where it's.
If I Had No Loot, that was the first single. No, Ex-Girlfriend. That saved me when I had a breakup, and I sang that song to cure my heart, and that was one of my most powerful. That's when I realized how powerful music is. But I kept singing it. My ex-girlfriend is a hoe, and that lifted my heart up. So I love that song to soul. That album.
We're gonna have to dig these albums out and review them, at some point.
But see, there's a Katie from Japan. Lots of people tuning in, and you know what? We're remembering D'Wayne. As I said, I've never done this. I've never just done a show after somebody's passed like this. But I guess I guess this was it just felt like, wow, it just seems like a lot happening so quickly. But this is a big band. This is our band, and we don't want to. We're not here to mourn. I think we're really here. We've always been around to celebrate, and it's a pity. Good that Andrew got to interview him for NGS3. I tried over the last 3 years, and they were always on tour. The manager was saying, maybe next week, and it just didn't happen. But we could still celebrate them.
So Ezekiel, really quick, I thought Stevie was referring to the group Ex-Girlfriend. No, Sons of Soul is actually my favorite of the Toni albums. I didn't realize he was talking about My Ex-Girlfriend is a H, which is the second track.
Yes.
I want to clear that up.
Yeah. When my first interview with Damien Hall, and he says that there are only two groups that he puts just above Guy, and he says Guy is the best ever, but the only two groups that he would just put up there are New Edition and Toni.
Yeah.
And so, it stood out to me. They went on tour. It stood out to me that wow. Because before there was a Mint Condition, there was a Toni. Now I've had the other guys, Elijah and Jubu, Anton, the guys who were, the band. It was supposed to be a group, a band, but a manager came in and said, "Look, we can't have 6 people. We're not going to sell records. Let's just have 3." And they kind of pushed them back, and they just separated them from there. But they just gave us just some of the best music that I could remember, just You and Me, Raised in California, as you rightly said, Hey Little Water. I mean, was massive.
Let's really quick. I remember on my long trips between the Bay Area and UC Santa Barbara, where I was going to college, and it was the House of Music album that came out in '96, and Party Don't Cry. That's the one that it's a very how are you supposed to live If You're Not Afraid to Die, When I Pass Away, Party Don't Cry. That was a D'Wayne song. And it just hit me. Like, it's just because what a beautiful but sad state. Like, you know, it's a melancholy statement to make, but it's also just like, party, don't cry. And literally, that's the last line that the Wiggins family put on their social media post. And I gotta say that song has flooded my brain. So, you know, we were talking about albums and how that House of Music album was made when there was a lot of kind of tension between the group, and that's why you've got like the Raphael songs like Thinking of You, the Al Green tribute, but then you also got like Last Summer, which I believe that's a D'Wayne song. I love that song. And then because it has a lot of falsetto, and then you've got the Party Don't Cry. But Sons of Soul, let me tell you, my favorite, well, this is about D'Wayne, but Anniversary, like that's the one for me. And so when I bought that album, and I bought it on the strength of the Anniversary, but then like every track on there, even Fun to me sounds like a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis off the Mo Money soundtrack kind of song. I totally see Marlon Wayans like running through the streets of that song. Dance Hall, but again, Slow Wine was just like, okay, whatever you want is just like a massive hit. And Slow Wine was just that summer of '94. Sons of Soul, mellow. It's just, man, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think what, you know, the thing, you know, the reunion tour, I remember listening to the interview with Raphael gave, and he said that if things were really at a high when they did the when they released House of Music, when they were making it, he was in his place with his crew doing his songs. Christian and D'Wayne with separate. They all made their songs. They handed it to the label. They put them together, and they came to shoot the "Let's Get Down" video. And then, but that was the tension, and they never really completed that tour. And this tour that they did was the conclusion of it. Like, you know, the tour we never finished. We're going to try and do it one. You know, we're trying to get it done, and they were able to come back for that. And I think that was touching that they actually had that tour. And maybe that's why cameras off. We don't know how D'Wayne may be. You know, we don't know how he might be. They just didn't want to. But he was still rocking. I mean, I saw.
You know what? I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that one of the videos I posted, it was taken last year. Just I think so he was still touring and singing. So he, you know, despite what was going on, that was just a few months ago. Well, just middle of last year.
Yeah, I gotta say, I definitely did notice something, and I wasn't gonna say anything, but like, you know, now that you say it, I remember thinking like he did seem a little bit frail and a little bit older than I expected, but I just thought maybe that's just age, you know. But now knowing that he was probably going through chemo at that point, like it just makes that experience all that more. Like I do feel lucky, I do, and it was literally. Here's what I'll say. There was a lot of cameras. The actual production of the show was like, they even had this whole new cast of people, like the drummers, like young Gen Z, you know, millennial instrumentalists, you know, who are talking about how when I met Raphael in New York and he asked me to be part of the band, like the interstitial stuff. It was very like, this needs to be on HBO. This needs to be on Netflix. Whatever it is, the world needs to see what just happened, because this was bigger than just the show that I saw. This was a celebration of Oakland and a celebration of a generation of music that literally was the soundtrack to our lives and our loves.
Stevie, when were you first introduced to Toni?
I gotta be honest, it would have been the Revival album. It would have been, because I'd heard the singles, The Blues, Feels Good. And then I went back to the first album. I obviously got the Teddy.
The Who album, yeah.
Yeah, the Teddy mixes of Baby Doll. He did some Teddy Riley mixes on that.
Yeah.
And then there was all the production offshoots of Toni, D'Wayne Wiggins. I've just had to go through his discogs again and remind myself of
Heart and Soul.
What I bought through the 90s, and there's a ton of stuff there. I mean, I mean, I keep this CD's to hand. I keep going on about this group, but D'Wayne wrote and produced a track on this called "Getting It On" by Modest Folk for Deborah Killings, which is it's a great track. But these gems throughout the 90s that he did, he worked a lot with Too Short, the rapper, as well, because obviously they're in the Bay Area, so he got his vocals on a lot of things. There's various. There was the tracks that he did for the likes of Ralph Tresvant.
Yo Baby Yo.
Yeah, there's the Menace to Society soundtrack. There's a great track on that produced by him.
Right Here Waiting. When you're lonely. Was that You Need Somebody?
Yeah, just let me have a look at
that was
Jody. He did a Jody Watley track in 1998. Kelly Price. He worked on Kelly Price. Kashif, Ebony Foster. It's saying here.
He had a solo album, I want to say, in 2000 as well. I remember.
No, he did.
This goes. I remember.
Yeah, that was so unexpected.
That's the one.
It was like so unexpected, just like came like, whoa, there was a single, Strange Fruit, which had a good DJ Quick remix on it, but this album, it didn't do much. I mean, is it Kedar Massenberg?
There was too much going on at the time, but I'm definitely gonna go back and like
a 2000 album, yeah, definitely investigate.
Yeah, that wasn't a great time, and Kedar was just, he was just, he didn't take it seriously. So, wow. I mean, I guess
some of the listeners might remember an artist called Blue, who was signed to Motown in 1995. My Old Lady, Stan soundtrack. I'm just going through Johnny Guitar Watson remix. Gosh, there's so much I didn't realize. Rajane, Simple E, On Edge. They were signed to Motown. A lot of stuff. Too Short again. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah,
he was a busy guy. It's a shame we didn't get an interview, Nandi. And another story we've not got.
Yeah, I mean, at the time they were just he was on the road with the revival of the Toni before, so they were always on shows. And as I said, the group they really, as I said, I still have those emails and correspondence, but it was one of those things where you just I didn't push it, and then when they went on tour again, when they reunited with Raphael, I thought, okay, when they slow down and stuff. But but it's, as I said, it is sad that I first heard about it 3 days ago with Mickey Howard. She posted it, and it wasn't anywhere. But I guess those who knew them well knew what was happening, and it just felt sudden because he was just within a week in a hospice, and it just felt as if this was it. But he kept it. It's almost like Chadwick Boseman when he was dying without anyone knowing, and that was what was D'Wayne, just playing and touring until he couldn't anymore. But it's, as I said, there was just an amazing.
What was the issues with the three of them then?
No, what Raphael said. Look, D'Wayne's his older brother. Same dad, different mum. They've. So sometimes sometimes it created differences in how they do things. He wanted to spread his own wings, and so. But I think at the time when they were recording, the success of Songs of Soul, they just had very different ideas as to how to do house of music, and D'Wayne and Christian just went their direction, and he did theirs, but they had to come up with an album. But it's sibling stuff, which, you're from Manchester, Oasis, so you can tell how it was. But Raphael always maintained that he loves his big brother, and they're all family. But it's just stuff that he got a group of guys together to reform Toni, and was touring with them, and that was they were getting shows in Yoshi's and House and City Wineries. They were getting their shows and doing their gigs. Nothing big until the surprise announcement that Raphael and Christian were coming back, and it must definitely have been because he says, "Look, I don't know how long I've got," and they put their differences aside, and that's a good end story because sometimes we get these stories that they don't end like that, where they're still falling out, and one passes, and it's like they never got that chance to reconcile. And so that's definitely a good end story for them. It's just a pity for those of us who didn't get to see them here in Europe. Hopefully they do put the package together and use it to celebrate him and his music.
It's funny. I love New Edition, obviously, and they called their first big tour after the big fallout the Culture Tour. But honestly, what I attended and even the videos that I saw before I attended, so they must have like clamped down on the videos after they started leaking. But I was like, that's a Culture Tour. I mean, you just feel the soul.
Which one? The Tonys?
Yes, that was like a real Culture Tour. Like it was like, this is for the culture, as they say. Everybody in that room was like there. They knew every word, and it was just like we're grown folks now, right? And we were there, when I Care was like the song that happens after Whatever You Want. Like we were there for all the eras, and we never thought this was going to happen because the split seemed so final. But you guys came back together. You sound amazing, all three of you. Like Timothy's playing well, and I gotta say, the fashion sense. Can we talk about that for a second? Even look at the picture behind you. His fashion sense was next level, and I think that not enough people realize that maybe he was behind that look that they had, back in the revival era. He always had a way of standing out. And even though, again, Raphael is no slouch, like he was definitely working it on stage, his fits, his presence, D'Wayne, was, I think, why we all stood up.
Yeah. I mean, Ezekiel's asked me if I ever seen him live and unfortunately that I never got that opportunity because I never got that opportunity to really celebrate them. And I mean, Stevie, did they ever come to the UK? When did you ever get a chance to see them?
I never saw them live. I'm sure they came to the UK. They would have done. But I was just thinking before they were a group with their own unique sound. We were spoilt back then for male R&B groups, but if you remember, they all had their own sound because, like you say, a lot of them were musicians, so they could create something that was individual. Whereas, like, you're getting your Gen Zers now coming up with their genre of R&B, and there is the odd group here and there, but they're all using the same production sounds. There's no real uniqueness about, some trap beats and this, that, and Toni were nothing like Mint Condition or Low Key or Guy or New Edition. It's just so unique looking back across the board that the generation coming up now will never experience what we experienced.
And they kept evolving. Oh, sorry, keep going.
It goes back to the 70s, 70s soul. I mean, I think Toni, even they were so influenced by 70s soul. You can hear it in the music.
Inga, you're right. Again, that's why I'm a little bit like sheepish now that I got to see them because, like, it was spiritual. Like I keep using that word. It was a spiritual experience to see them live. It's like because What I was going to say as well, you brought up Mint Condition. So my second concert ever was the Janet tour as in 1994 in support of Janet's 93 album. And Toni was the opening act for that tour. But they dropped off. And I think it's because they realized, hey, we're bigger than this. We can do our own thing. So I ended up actually seeing Mint Condition. Mint Condition was the fill-in. So it's funny how that worked. So I still remember seeing, Oh You Send Me Swinging live and everything, but then going, man, I love them, don't get me wrong, it's flight time, right? But man, to have seen the Tonys open for Janet, come on.
Oh, I think maybe because I remember hearing when Prince kicked time off his tour because they were slaying.
Oh, upstaging.
They're
Yes,
upstaging.
yes.
So I think people were
Yeah.
like, "Well, this is actually
That.
much better than we expected," and it's very easy to say, it's just not working out. So they wouldn't have been like, "No, we could do it ourselves." It would have been a word to the manager, like, "Yeah, it's not working," because I've seen, people who've, someone is saying, "Yeah, they're." We're getting a lot of people saying that they're really amazing live. I saw a video of them doing cartwheels and really, because they're a proper musical band, but they learned how to perform. And then Raphael became a hybrid of Prince, Michael, when he's singing. And then, just like when you watch Coldplay and Chris Martin would sing, get on the piano and jump around. You've got musicians who can all sing and vibe and dance as well, like what a feel good, the video. So they took that on stage as well. Yeah, goodness. I mean, we're fortunate, those of us who who really, late 80s, early 90s. We're really blessed. I'm sure, yes, those who in the 70s would say, yeah, we had all the big bands and stuff, and no one's gonna dispute that. But I feel blessed with the fact that, I was a sort of a 90s kid and really got to experience some of these amazing bands. Unfortunately, not all of them live, because by the time, I didn't get to see all of them live. Um, when it comes to him as a music executive, I know that Destiny's Child were initially signed to um, um, Daryl Simmons' silent partner. He first saw them when they were like 9 or 10, and he was trying to work with them. He couldn't work with them, and he had a fallout with Matthew Knowles, and they went their way. And then I do remember that D'Wayne Wiggins seems to have maybe got them signed to Sony.
I would have to look it up. I think he actually might have even produced the original version of no, 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 no. But I don't know if that's the name of the song. But their very first thing, it's a slow version, and then
Yeah.
I think he actually did that one. Now I gotta look it up. Hey, I see someone from the Bay Area, D Minor. Thanks for joining in. Again, as a Bay, I'm actually flying to Oakland tonight, like in a few hours. So, yeah, Paramount Theater, I think, was the last venue for their tour. So, I think that would have, my show was great, don't get me wrong, but I think to have been to the Paramount Theater, I think in Oakland, to the last show of the night of the tour would have been, again, even transcendent. I said spiritual, I say transcendent. Another thing I want to get out really quick though is someone had said, yeah, I don't know, you guess it, said they got better after the NGS era. And what I'll say is I love the fact that they kept evolving their sound. Because, the Who album is different than like the Revival album, although they're probably somewhat related. But then by Sons of Soul, they're incorporating a bit more of an organic, like acoustic guitar. Like they're all over the place, but it's still tight and it feels different than the Revival. And then by the time you get to House of Music, they're digging into the 70s. And it's a more, even more mature sound. So I don't know how many groups can do that, where it's like every album had a distinct vibe, but every vibe was good. And every vibe, particularly for me, the last two albums, you can hit play and not skip. It's like a journey.
There was a few groups. I'm just, my brain's ticking here. There was a few groups in the 70s and the mid 70s. There was a group called, I'm digging deep in my music knowledge, called the Natural Four, and there was another group called, I think they were called the Five Stair Step. And the fashion was them big hats that Toni wore and the big coats, and I know I used to say with a friend, I bet Toni took some of the inspiration from these like really like obscure 70s soul groups who were terrific back then. So yeah, just thinking then. In the comments here, any of you remember though the Natural Four? I'm digging deep there in my soul knowledge. The five. You know, but there was like you say a sound back then that definitely influenced Toni. I mean, I'm thinking also. I don't want to say we're talking like it's the end of the group. I mean, I hope that I know it's raw at the moment. It's very soon, but I hope the all can reform at some point and just do like a tribute gig. You know, because you've got 5 members still around that they could just,
Yeah,
you know, put all the differences aside and
yeah,
just, you know, do a tribute gig.
yeah. I
To
mean,
you know,
so Anton, who was the keyboardist from the band, the 2020 as a group when they were all together, he posted a video yesterday. Just and the documentary that they did over almost 2 million when they spoke about how they got sort of shafted out of 2020. Banton last night posted a video saying, "Look, man, let's just keep our brother in prayers." That he there's no hard feelings with the other guys. They understand it was a business move. They understand it wasn't the guys because they all grew up with them. They all live next door, and but it was they understand that politics pushed them out and stuff like that. But even though they stay open up about their experience, it was never hate and stuff like that. But there is D'Wayne was the heart and soul of everything. Along with Raphael, but it's something that hopefully the other guys, Jubu is probably one of the best lead guitarists. He was the guy who's plays Anniversary. They're all there, they're all together. So there's stuff that hopefully they will be able to do a tribute and be able to do a tour just in honor of D'Wayne and his leadership and his vision. I mean, do you have do you have some of your favorites from the group? Songs.
oh, there's so many. I mean, there's so many underrated songs, like from the revival. Whatever You Want is just a great song from the Sons of Soul. Like you say, you just mentioned Anniversary there. Anniversary, what a great record that is. Slow Wine. I need to revisit those albums. I those 2 albums in particular back then I played to death. I did play them to death. I've not listened to them for many years, and obviously with this podcast we've got a great opportunity to revisit them now. And we have been talking about it offline.
Yeah.
We have to do a Toni special at some point. It's just very sad that this has happened. That it's probably brought it forward a bit more quicker than probably what we would have done, but it's the way it is. With the way things are going at the moment, we don't know who we're going to lose again. Who we're going to lose. So it's just the way life's going at the moment. We're all of that age now where we're not in our 20s and 30s. We've gone past the great middle age, and it's like you're counting your blessings that we're still here. You know what I mean? You're counting your blessings every day now that you're still here because you just don't know tomorrow's not promised. And we're finding that out. We have found that out so hard over the last week or so. So very hard. So, yeah.
I think it's one of the things where you think of Angie Stone. She was just about the same age. D'Wayne was 65. Angie was 63. And she was on her way back from a show. And then, she's the only one that died in the accident. Roberta Flack was in the 80s, and so she would have said, yes, once you get to your 80s, you could think, okay, I've lived. These two, Angie Stone and D'Wayne, it just seems, really, really caught short, how with their lives. But yeah, we had Irv Gotti,
Years.
Yeah, Roy Ayers. I mean, Roy Ayers. I think I first time I heard him was when he collaborated with Fela. I thought he was African because I knew him.
Roy Ayers was African.
Yeah, because I've only first heard about him probably in the 80s, but he did a track with Fela.
Some of those album covers he did, it does look very African in some of the album covers. No.
Okay. So look at
But
D-Man who said he just interviewed D'Wayne 2 weeks ago about Sly Stone.
Wow.
Yeah, goodness, yeah. Yeah, so Royers, I mean, just definitely. But also he got into his 80s and stuff.
True.
But when they die young, um, that's in itself is the hard part. I mean, guys everyone that's writing stuff in there, any memories of either if you've ever met Dwayne, any thoughts about if you want to actually come on and just say a few words, let us know. I'll put the link in just because we've got about another 20 minutes. But if anyone,
Yeah, and I don't know. I think we mentioned Slow Wine
yeah,
several times, but I want to say the one they didn't mention that gave me chills when I thought about it was "Lay Your Head on My Pillow," which happens right after Slow Wine. And I remember when I first listened to that album, like I knew the album was just like, yeah, this is a masterpiece, because I'm like, again, I bought this for Anniversary, and Anniversary is all the way at the end of side 2, right? This is cassette days, and just comes on right after Slow Wine. I'm like, this album is what?
yeah,
My God.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, right? It's like, so that's, and oh my God. Anyways, I did do a little bit additional reading. I just want to make sure that I'm giving, as much props as possible. So it was the Grassroots Entertainment that he signed Destiny's Child to in '95, actually. And he had a recording studio called House of Music in West Oakland. And a lot of people went to that recording studio. Keisha Cole, he was involved with her career between '99 and 2001. He worked with Larnay. She was the lead singer of Arrested Development. He also worked with Alicia Keys, India Arie, Jamie Foxx, Eddie Money, and Scott Storch. They all went to that studio. So he was somebody who basically was very much like in the background, just kind of being foundational and being a good kind of mentor to everybody coming through, again, including Alicia Keys. He played sitar on one of the tracks, If I Was Your Woman, and he got a Grammy for his participation. So, he was the backbone. He was, again, the leader of the group. And I'm glad, again, that they were able to come back around and perform together. But I think Raphael, as we know, needed to fly and become Raphael Saadiq. Because remember, he was Raphael Wiggins in the
yeah.
But then he became Saadiq. So he had to kind of just do his own thing. But man, what a loss.
Was there in the tour? I mean, what was the chemistry like between the three of them? Because you saw New Edition. Was it comparable, or did it seem as if were they rusty? Did they feel like three guys?
There was no rust, none. No, it was fluid. It was beautiful. It was awesome. Again, just being completely real. Like there were times where I wondered if there was something a little amiss. Like I remember at one point, even at the end, when they go to take their bow, it's like Raphael, Timothy Christian Riley, and then they had to, and then Dwayne's way over there, and he has to kind of run over and remember to do the bow. But at first, I think it was like, come over here, So I was wondering at first, is there still a little bit of like, hey, my shine over here, your shine over there? But now I'm like, dude, you're going through a health situation, so anything could have happened as far as any weird chemistry things going on. But no. They were a tightly well-oiled machine that had grown into their dopeness. Again, one thing I'll say about Raphael really quick is, some singers sing it different every time. Like Johnny Gill, for example, like he never sings it the same. It's always different. Raphael hits every single like he's in the pocket. That's what they call that, and it's just like you singing it just like the record, but it sounds even better. How's that even possible? It just does. And then, Dwayne, it's just like, it's one thing to have his voice on a record, but when you have his voice, it's more just live. And then you've got that Marvin Gaye kind of skull cap going on, and the outfit and the sunglasses, and just like, and everyone's just like, again, his songs, like he had like 2 like big songs, but they're not just any songs. Like Whatever You Want is like, people know that song. As a matter of fact, I got excited, but I gotta say this. 2004, I'm doing NJS forever. So obviously anything New Jack Swing is making me like swell with pride. So when Ludacris came out with the remix to Make Love to Me, Doom Doom, I forget the name of the song, but there's a song that he has, I forget the name of the song, but he sampled Whatever You Want. So I remember like in the video, like it starts the original and then it goes to the Whatever You Want remix. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. It is New Jack Swing forever. Like it's 2004. It sounds old now, but it's 2004. And like you got a 1990 song on here. So anyone in the comments, if you know that song, I'll go look it up. It's a Ludacris song. Find it. It's a Whatever You Want sample. Yeah, I talked a lot.
What was it like doing interviewing D'Wayne? Did he, what was he saying? I mean, how was he a reserved person when you did the
Flash
interview?
waterfalls. So he was, again, his energy was very mellow.
Okay, he does. He just always look like he's mellow. Even when he sang Slow Wine, he just feels like he's a chilled guy.
Humble, authentic. And I actually do have the audio. It's on those little Splash Waterfalls. Yes, that's the one. I do have the audio, but it's on those little micro cassettes. So I gotta just like, I have so much that I just have to like, digitize, and I will. But between him and then Sean Levert, I have him. Also, same. It was for the New Jack Swing tour. I think it happened in 2007. I interviewed them both for that, and it's just crazy to me now that people who are no longer with us, I have that memorabilia, and I think that the world needs to hear it. So it was like talking to a friend, and I'm not just making that up. Because again, we had a laugh over the New Jack Swing on your nuts question.
I'm sure he was surprised that people even brought that up.
And I'm like, your tour is called New Jack Swing Tour, but you said New Jack Swing on my nuts, and I love New Jack Swing, so can we like clear that up? And, he laughed. He laughed. It was great.
Oh goodness, yeah. I mean, as I said, guys, I did put a link if anyone wanted to chat, to come up and say any memories of them before we wrap up. But do you think, Stevie, that if we were ever listing our top 10 favorite groups, with Toni fit into that?
We did do a podcast on that. We'll have to do another podcast on it because we've got with VJ and Andrew, but they're definitely in the top 10. New Jack Swing, they've got to be, haven't they? They have to be.
Yeah. I mean,
if I go back I could even go back to my New Jack Swing top 10 groups here somewhere, probably, just to make sure that I did, but it doesn't really matter. We'll have to do it again.
It's funny though, because I don't even really, when I think of Toni, like they participated like in New Jack Swing, but for me it was like, it sounds weird to say bigger than New Jack Swing, but like they were out. I'll just say they were outside of it, and so for me, like I said earlier, I make no secret. Like for me, my favorite ones, album-wise, are Sons of Soul and House of Music, and those two are kind of, they're outside of the era. So yeah, Toni for me are just kind of in a class of their own, and for those who get it, they're huge. For those who don't, they're like Tora, cool, funny name, feels good. I like that song. But I think that, again, if you get it, you get it. And they were really something else.
But then when you think of it, though, because if we're thinking, Guy is always cemented with, the Groove Me, the New Jack Swing, and Teddy. So they've got their place. Jodeci have their space, because they came out in the 90s, and then maybe Boyz II Men. I don't know if we're thinking about the 90s, people would talk, as I said, Jodeci, Boyz II Men, Dru Hill, Guy, Blackstreet. I don't know how many people would automatically roll out Toni as frequently. I don't know if they got their flowers consistently like the rest of those guys I've just mentioned.
Somebody said something in the comments, and I agree with them. They said that they were kind of like the Blues. Good call, Rascal. Someone said that they were kind of ahead of their time. Like, see, they said that it was like almost like proto neo soul in a way, as far as the Sons of Soul goes. You know, and here's what I'll say. I think you're right. I think they were not like Boyz II Men, Jodeci, like all the other ones who were celebrated, right? Because I do think they sat a little bit outside of that circle, and they were a little different. But trust me, I think that even though you might not have heard their names shouted out as much, like the people who do know them hold them in very high regard, you know. And I maybe I'm being optimistic, but I think their legacy is only gonna expand. I do, but I do think that they need to put out that concert like special. I do, because I think people need to understand like who they were, what they did, and how many songs they actually, like how many musical acts they actually impacted. They impacted a lot.
Yeah, but Stevie, you remember when we interviewed Dila Vance, and I wonder who else? Then was it? Oh goodness, what was the? Is it N Knox N? No, what was the N? What's the other group that we interviewed from the West Coast? Stevie, can you remember?
Oh, Z Luke.
Z Luke, and I wonder sometimes if the West Coast R&B acts actually get enough credit. I know.
1,000%. Yeah. Troop's probably the biggest group outside of Toni who gets any love. And from what I understood, like when I was doing this NJS for Everything, Troop didn't really impact like the UK or Europe. It was really more of an American thing, you know? I think of our, West Coast R&B. I think of them. I think of like Timex Social Club, which I believe that's how we got Denzel Foster and Thomas McElroy. I think En Vogue, and I think a Special Generation. You know, but yeah, no, I think that's a really good question about West Coast R&B. You're right.
I mean, in the UK, I do remember they tried to promote Oakland Stroke. They give it a lot of remixes.
Oh yeah, was that with Vanessa Williams?
And they tried to promote If I Had No Loot as well. Those two singles specifically. So they did try, and I think If I Had No Loot was like a minor hit over here. You know, it did. You know, it was quite a minor hit. It was getting a lot of like soul radio plays at the time, and so I think the Sons of Soul album had a bigger impact over here than what the Revival album did. Whereas the Revival album had a bigger impact in the States. They were very much a critically acclaimed group.
Yes.
Back.
The other thing I would say is like Sons of Soul, like even though Feels Good was a big crossover hit, a pop hit, I think Sons of Soul was like basically, man, thank you, Phantoms. That's really nice. I think Sons of Soul did cross over big time as well. But again, because like, I just gotta say, guitars, they tend to kind of resonate with, you know, a crossover audience, right? And I think they embrace that more, less synths and keyboards and more kind of guitars. And then by the time you get to the Raphael Saadiq era, of course, that's super crossover. Like it's really more like, it's not even like, yeah, R&B crowd is into it, but then you've also got that kind of, I'll call it the NPR crowd. If you guys can kind of follow what I'm calling, like it's a different crowd.
Yeah,
you get it. But yeah, the Tonys they weren't just a commodity; they were art. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, but it is interesting that West Coast acts did not get the. So all, I mean, you know, even though Jodeci's from the South, but they were based out of New York. They know the whole uptown, so they were considered that. If I Had No Loot was their biggest song on the Billboard 100, but then Anniversary was their biggest R&B hit.
Do you know what? Do you know why that is? Because I think the West Coast groups had more of the East Coast groups had more of a hip hop influence in the music. I think the West Coast, it was about funk. You know, I think there's a lot more of a funk influence in the music. And
yeah,
you know what area you was from, funk was big in some places, but it wasn't in others. Like I say, where I'm from, in Manchester, funk didn't really wasn't a thing here. Funk, it was only there's little pockets of people who appreciated funk music. So, like I say, New York with the East Coast hip hop, it kind of, you know, you heard that in with Guy and N Touch and them other groups. So
I also feel like the infrastructure wasn't there. And when I say infrastructure, I mean like I don't want to get too sociological, but I'll just say this: like DC is Chocolate City. New York, you had like a Puffy, whereas in the West Coast, it's like it's a lot more like I don't know how to put it. I'll just leave that at that. I'll just say there's more cultural infrastructure on the East Coast than on the West Coast for, I would say, African American anything. And I think that what was allowed to thrive in the West Coast is that more kind of gangster rap, NWA, Too Short, which is why the Let's Get Down thing totally worked, because it's obviously DJ Quick on there. One thing I want to make sure we mention, and it's on the tip of I remember now. No, it's gone. I want to mention it. Good Lord, it's important, and I want to mention it. And
you've done well tonight. You've remembered quite. You brought that. I was.
But it's key, and it's like I'm trying to remember it. And after we're done,
strain yourself because it'll just go.
No, but it is it possible that Mint Condition, when they came out with Pretty Brown Eyes and Breaking My Heart, they kind of took the thunder from Toni, especially after Sons of Soul album. The Mint Condition kind of got better and better. I mean, I've seen the Mint Condition live, and they sound much better than
Jam and Lewis. Ron Jam and Lewis's label Perspective. That Pretty Brown Eyes was a big Quiet Storm ballad hit over there.
Yeah.
So
Breaking Your Heart.
Group. I think they had more resources to push them, whereas Polydor or what was it, Wing Records back then?
Yeah, Mercury.
Maybe they're pushing other rock things.
Yeah, but they
black music label.
Yeah, but they were pushed. I mean, but within Black households, I mean, when you think of You're Breaking My Heart, What Kind of Man, they had the ballads, but if you see the Mint live now, as I said, I've not seen Toni live. I've seen videos, but when you see Mint live, they sound like the record, if not better. I mean,
Toni, I've got one ballad we've not even mentioned yet that was huge. That is still used.
And you?
That's been
you. That one?
No, it's been sampled as well. It Never Rains in Southern California. You forget?
Oh, I mentioned it. I mentioned it at the beginning. I was living in Canada and I moved to California,
That's as big as anything Mint Condition ever did.
Yeah, I would actually have to say Mint Condition, I would consider them more like, no, we were trying to be the Tonys. I'm sorry. Like I feel like
Mint Condition had the Minneapolis influence.
No, yeah. I said, but not like trying to copy them, but I don't I would put Tonys above them, and that's fine because I remember now Prince wanted the Tonys to be his band, and they declined. It's a very big statement to make. I'm so glad I remembered. That's got to be put on this podcast. Prince wanted them. And it was like, a big deal for them to say no to Prince. And they did. That's huge. That's a huge belief in oneself to do that. But yeah, no, Mint, I love Mint. I mean, for me, it's for me, my personal favorite is Someone to Love and You Send Me Swinging. But Pretty Brown Eyes, of course, and Forever in Your Eyes. That's also one I think people forget about. Love that song. And then you get to what kind of man could I be and all that stuff. But the Tonys, their album cuts are still like we could talk about album cuts fun about Leaving. That was a single.
Oh yeah, I'm leaving. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that was
Oh,
that was definitely. I mean, but when you think of because Hey Little Water was number 1 on the R&B charts. Baby Doll was number 5. The Blues was number 1. Feels Good was number 1. Never Rains in California was number 1. Whatever You Want was number 1. They had If I Had No Loot was number 8. As I said, it was big. It was actually bigger on the Billboard 100 than it was on the R&B charts. Anniversary didn't get to number 1. I think it probably had a Boyz II Men track that was keeping it off. And Lay Your Head on My Pillow was number 4. I mean, this is 93, 94 when it was just, we had Mary, had all these albums. So it was just it was hard to really get things going there. But I think you're right that they were consistent. They could not only perform, sing, and create great music, but they could perform as well. But I just think that they just didn't. I don't think. I think within the industry, everyone would just say they all respect the Tonys. As I said, Damien Hall from Guy said only two groups he would put above, put on the par with Guy, and maybe just slightly bigger. And he says New Edition and Tony, and so it means within the industry, people gave them their props and their respect. But I just think it's apart from, if I'm looking at the album sales, Songs of Soul did double platinum, House of Music just went platinum, The Revival went platinum, and Who went gold. So that made a big difference. If you're not selling the albums, that's what people are looking at. I mean, that's probably what hurt them. I mean, I think even Blackstreet would have been given more worldwide national props than Tony among just people who aren't into R&B.
Namdi, you said something about talented people giving props, and I also remember that first interview I ever did, Bernard Bell, and Bernard Bell said that him and the band would be so competitive with the Tonys on tour together. He said those guys were amazing. I have that audio too. I gotta find it, but I remember him talking about the Tonys being like, that's who we wanted to beat. And it was like an East Coast, like a New York, like California rivalry. He gave them their props.
So for anyone who hasn't heard this song, Ex-Girlfriend, as I said, for me as a breakup, so I know women have loads of nice breakup songs, I Hate You Right Now and all that stuff. But I rinsed that song out, and it got me over the bad breakup, and I was like, yes, it's not my fault. That's why. And this was when I realized powerful music, because if I could sing that out of a bad breakup, you can do anything with music. But yeah, I mean, as I said, it is strange that the Tonys, just on reflection, they didn't sell as much, and they didn't get. But the song that Raphael did for Boys in the Hood, was it Just You and Me?
Just me and you.
Just me and you. It wasn't a Tony song, but it was him. But I think the label wanted it. The label wanted it to be Tony, but he was like, he wrote it and he did it himself. But it's just they just had that creative spark, and I think one of the things we don't really talk about the Bay Area was the musicianship that they had, and the impact they did have on the music. But sadly, I think when the gangster rap and all that stuff came out, it did overshadow a lot of the actual R&B and stuff that they had out there. Anyway, so guys, we just quickly. I mean, we don't come out on a Friday. I'm surprised how many people are joining us live. But it is because, as I said, it was after a week of just every day, it felt as if we're just losing one of our legends. And then when I just saw that D'Wayne had just passed, after maybe a long or short battle, but we only found out within the last couple of days that he wasn't doing well. It just felt like, wow, one of my favorite groups, and he was the lead, the rock within that group, and it just seems sad. But it's good that we can celebrate, and that's what we keep doing, is we keep celebrating the music, we keep celebrating their achievements. And ideally, we like to do that when they're alive to appreciate it. But for the rest of the members, we want to be able to celebrate with them now, and grieve with the family. But as I said, celebrate their music. So if there's anything we can do, it would be to go back, listen to the Who album, listen to the Revival album, listen to Songs of Soul, and listen to
go back to the
House
album.
of Music.
And there's also a couple of singles that he released in 2010. One is called I Betcha. The other one is called Pull 'Em to the Side. They're both on both singles are on streaming sites now, and this album's on streaming as well, so you can as well.
Phoebe, how is the album? How is the album?
It's got some moments on it. You know, I haven't listened to it for a long time, but it has got some nice moments on it. It's well worth checking out.
Wow, Rosie Gaines as well. It's wow. This is and we're only in March. I mean,
Hold on a minute. Rosie Gaines has passed away as well.
Yeah, this one.
No, I've not heard about that. Is Rosie Gaines? She was from the Bay Area, new, but I don't know.
I think yes, she did. Yes, Rosie Gaines. She let me see.
That's if she's still alive.
No.
She's from Pittsburgh, California. So yeah, Bay Area. Same age.
Okay.
64.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was just thinking. No, I didn't. Yeah. But everyone wants to live. Nobody wants to die. When I pass away, don't cry. D'Wayne Wiggins. Yeah. I mean, it's as I said, we're just entering March, and we've lost so many great ones. But please, if you could do anything, it would be as you know, as we just said, just listen to their music, just remember them, give them their props. I think, you know, unfortunately, Toni didn't, you know, among a lot of us, we give them their props. I think a lot of other people, they might have just easily forgotten them. So definitely, please just listen to their music. You know, I'm gonna do a poll tomorrow just to see which was your favorite album. I'm sure Songs of Soul will probably top that easily, but I wonder how much the Revival album really has such a spot for. That's one of my first 5 single CDs I ever bought, that yellow CD, and I still had fond memories of that. So that would be a hard one to beat. But yeah, so anyway, just as we wrap up, Andrew, any sort of final reflections on D'Wayne, the Tonys, the tour that you saw, and the music and the legacy?
I feel blessed. I know what I'm going to be listening to this weekend, and we are going to celebrate their music. This is going to be a party, don't cry, just honor his memory, his sentiment. But man, it's forever, man. I'm at a loss of words. Sorry. Yeah, I'm feeling it.
Stevie, what about you, sir?
It's been an emotional week. It kind of what you're feeling now, Andrew. I felt Wednesday morning. When I got off my bus to work, I'd found out that Roy Ayers had passed away. My best friend did work. He did some remix and production work with Roy Ayers in Manchester, actually. So, and he sent me a message, and I was just like, I was quite emotional on Wednesday. We'd had a great podcast on the Wednesday evening. It's a tough one today because I've literally only found out a couple of hours that D'Wayne passed away. So I'm happy that we can all share this evening together. You know, I'm glad we can do that and just reflect on that. So
yeah. I mean, and I'll echo with both of you. I mean, since May of 2020, all I've really wanted to do was just celebrate people while they're around. It's the music. There was no competition. There was no gossip. It was about just the music and the memories that it brought us. And part of being able to interview them, as many as possible, was while they're around, just to say thank you for what you've done to us. And there are just too many to be able to capture, and some slip through the cracks. Never got a chance to interview D'Wayne, even though I was in touch with his team, and they were going back and forth. But the one thing we hadn't done was to do any reviews on the Tony's album, because it was so special to us. And so to honor him, to honor the group, we over the next couple of weeks, we're going to find time to be able to appreciate their albums, not as a group but individually, because they really, Revival album was a big New Jack album. Songs of Soul was one of the greatest R&B albums of its time. it didn't get the worldwide recognition that it should, even though some of the songs like Anniversary and Slow Wine and stuff are really culturally relevant to us. But we want to be able to continue to celebrate all this music. And so please listen to they'll go back and listen to, all these old songs, all these old albums, and celebrate them, because we were blessed for those in the 90s and the 80s to be able to listen to some great stuff. And this is something that we're doing this evening, was just to say thank you to D'Wayne. You know, we mourn with your family, and you're definitely your brother and your bandmates. We want to say thank you for the music, for the memories. I think of me and you, and I'm thinking of, I can remember Boys in the Hoods. All the rain. It doesn't rain in Southern California. When I moved to California and it rained, I was like, "Hey, were they lying?" I mean, you know, it's, it shocked me that way. I thought it didn't rain here. And then also, um, Slow Wine. That it's the fact that he got his own vibe when he sings different from his brothers, and but so great group, great band, and definitely we want to celebrate you, D'Wayne, and celebrate the group as well. For everyone who's joined us live this evening, we appreciate you guys. We thank you for putting your comments in, and sharing with us your memories of D'Wayne and the group. Yeah, even though Tony will still live on in some form. I know it's going to be hard without D'Wayne, because he was the centerpiece and he kept it going. But definitely appreciate everyone who joined us live and stuff. Andrew's got to catch a flight. Both Stevie and I have had a long day. Stevie has a radio show tomorrow. On Saturday, I've got some therapy sessions in the morning. But if you can catch us Saturday night, when we're going to be reviewing what's the 411 album, Mary's debut album. We're just going to keep celebrating it. We're not going to wait till people pass before we celebrate. We're going to celebrate that and keep celebrating good music and our favorite artists. So, okay. Well, Andrew, thanks, and Steve, because, I have to say, just within the last hour, I just asked these guys, I said, look, I've never done this, but I just wanted to go live and just share with you guys with the news of D'Wayne, and just talk about that. And both Stevie and Andrew said, yeah, you know what, we want to come on and say our piece. And so I have to appreciate you guys for taking this time, because I would have just been on my own just talking, but it made a massive difference having you guys here this evening. So thanks everyone. Big Mike and Tim Beats, we haven't seen you guys in a while. So we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you. So keep celebrating. Take care, guys.